Yeah, and so the next match on our card was Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the WWE Women's SmackDown Championship. So there was a comment, which was I think a cool fact here, and announcers made it known that all all the ring personnel and all the wrestlers and all the referees involved in the match for the first time in history were all women. So that was a cool little fact to start off the match. And again, Ripley and Flair came down to the ring, made their entrances, and they started off in the match with face off, and they milked the crowd. And when they locked up, there was a lot of back and forth between Rhea and Flair, and then eventually Rhea, being like perceivably the stronger woman, she began to show dominance. She began to show her moves. Her punches and slaps all looked good. But I gotta say, at this point, at the early stages of the match, the crowd really felt dead. Like, I think they just didn't have energy from the last match between Mysterio and Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio. So I guess the crowd was a little exhausted at this point. But when Rhea started playing to the crowd, I think the crowd gave her a reaction like they really wanted her to win, right? So I think it's not like they don't like Flair as a champion, but I just think they like someone else. They liked someone else, or they wanted someone else to win that championship. They wanted someone new, and I think Rhea Ripley is very hot right now in terms of her in-ring work, in terms of her association with the Judgment Day, and in terms of her heat as a heel. So I think they just really wanted Rhea to win. And during the match, Charlotte worked the leg of Rhea, supposedly or presumably to set up Rhea for the figure 4 leg lock or the figure 8 leg lock. At one point, Charlotte went to the top rope, but Rhea caught her on the top rope. But I noticed that Rhea was actually having a hard time lifting her. She was eventually able to, and Rhea, I think, slammed Flair to the floor, right? Then Rhea attempted her finishing move, the Riptide, but Flair countered with a DDT, and then they went back to a series of exchanges back and forth. When Rhea was on top, Charlotte made a comeback. Then Charlotte went off the top rope, but then Rhea caught Flair on the top rope, and Rhea actually German suplexed her onto her face, which I think the referee went right away to Flair to check on her if her nose was broken or her face was smashed in somehow. But she just came out. She was okay, but I guess she just came out with a little gash on her face on the top of her nose. So the match continued. Eventually, they went to the floor outside on ringside, and Rhea slammed Flair into the steps. Rhea also German suplex Flair face first again, which again, this looked brutal on replay, but she did a better job here. Excuse me. And then she went to the floor. They went to the floor again. When Rhea was on the floor and Flair was in the ring, Flair went onto the top rope and did her big spot, which is her usual spot, which is the moonsault from the top rope onto Rhea Ripley. Then they went back into the ring. When in the ring, Rhea hits a Riptide, but then Flair kicks out. And again, at this point, the crowd was so into the match because at first they were really dead, but because of the series of moves and because of the match itself, which made a lot of sense, and both wrestlers sell each other's moves perfectly, the crowd was so into it, and they really didn't know if Flair or Ripley was going to win the match. So the action intensified when Flair attempted a small package, but after this it was reversed into a cloverleaf, or what we call a prison lock by Rhea Ripley. It's kind of a reverse cloverleaf, which is a very impressive move. And again, Flair, she knows how to sell the move perfectly. Like, she was really in pain from that cloverleaf by Rhea Ripley. So, Eventually, Flair was able to reverse that, and then Flair hit her signature spear. She tried to pin Rhea, but Rhea kicked out again to the delight of the crowd. And then another exchange of blows where, that usual exchange of blow spot where both wrestlers are tired and the crowd goes, woo, yee, woo, yee for each other wrestlers' blows. So I think that was a proper time to do that spot there. And then eventually, Flair hit Rhea with a figure four. But again, at this point, Rhea does have very good facial expressions, and it seemed like she was about to tap, but she gets to the rope. And at that point, the crowd was so into it that, again, the "This is awesome" chants. Um, this is you could hear "This is awesome" chants, and it was in fact awesome for me. I was really into the match at this point. Then Flair went to the top rope again, but Ripley reversed. She caught Flair on the top rope, on the second rope, I mean, and then Ripley hit a big riptide, her finishing maneuver, from the second rope. Uh, Ripley then covered Flair. 1, 2, 3. Rhea Ripley is your new WWE SmackDown Women's Champion. The crowd popped like crazy. So, my comments about the match, I think this was the classic example of a match that had a dead start because the crowd was very tired, that turned into a banger because of the competitors, and it built up like a crescendo. It was really a slow burn of a match, but it reached its peak. It reached its peak at the right time, and it really had a great big finish to the match, right? So I think for me, honestly, this is one of the best matches of the night, along with Dominic and Rey Mysterio. And you will not, and I repeat, you will not probably find a better women's match in the last 5-10 years than this match, because both competitors were over wrestlers who looked believable, who looked like they could really take a beating and really could give a beating. And both are very good workers who know how to sell. The story made sense, and both were very over, and they just had a banger of a match. Which, I think, if you look at it, this is how the women's division should be booked, right? You don't have to have too many women in these programs when they're not ready to have matches like these. Of course, we have top women like Becky Lynch, Bailey, Bianca Belair, and here Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. If you keep the core of of women's wrestling within these top wrestlers, it can make for very compelling matches, which viewers would like to tune in. But I think if the companies continue to think that just because there are a few good women wrestlers on the top of the card, that we should hire a lot more women wrestlers who are not yet ready for the limelight, it might result in turns in the fans turning on the product and not just tuning out because they don't see great wrestling. But this was a classic example of two women wrestlers in their prime having a match which made absolute perfect sense from a technical standpoint and from the standpoint of just audience impact. So again, a very good match, and I don't think this rivalry is finished because at the end of the match you could see Flair giving that grin like, okay, you got me here, but maybe I'll get you next time. So I think there's more story to be told here. Yeah, that was the match. That was Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. And again, if you have comments or thoughts about that match, you can just always comment down below, and I'll get as soon as we can. I'll get to them as soon as we can.